rainy day,
We
yesterday
might,
was
the
a
rainy day may have hit. I said we might have,
Oh, this one's incorrect.
good
We
thing
had
we
one
got that
person
money
on
to
there that was not
tide
gonna be
us
on the
over for a
committee.
little
I don't know,
while.
is
So
it
this
blow?
is the
It
reason
does
why.
question it, yeah.
This
It's been a wild ride on the
So
A. I
we
like,
just
I just
cancel
heard about it
this
on the radio
that.
driving home.
It's
Up or
nothing
down?
different, I just wanted to make sure you had the,
No,
okay, since they will be different, so we
All right.
expect
Flat.
on that.
Enough three, and they said on the way here, it's down to flat.
You know,
Like
you know,
18.
you know, I think it's a huge number. I mean, my number's always been.
But if they're gonna get the same results, then they might as well wait.
Well, it won't get
We
the
were
same
probably
because,
10 to 12% overvalued, and when the market's correct, they always overcorrect. So, you know, I mean, I've been looking for a 15% swing.
Afternoon, Dwayne.
But the numbers are so big.
Yeah, I just.
Doing pretty good. Just came off the golf course.
Yeah, the dollar was nice. Dollar is a lot.
Oh, like normal.
Oh, you lost
Some days are rainy,
not down that much.
some,
I got a couple.
some rocks, some diamonds.
Oh, yeah, it stings.
940, I played 17 holes, and then,
Yeah.
Remember that advice, right?
what are they doing to the road? They get all that backup.
They're striping.
Where?
That yellow stripe is coming down.
Keel
Keel
Island
Park, where there's a big backup coming today.
Huge backup.
You know, I saw that they had stripers, so I.
That's what it was.
Is that what they
It
were
was
doing?
stripers.
Yeah.
And then they got to the end where they stopped, and I think they're just pausing as to what they do next.
And their lunch?
That's recorded, but it's not YouTube. Oh, okay.
What are we all smiling here? Our group over there. What time is it?
158.
Yeah, 150. I don't want to be, yeah, did you just forget this one? That happens.
Yeah, sorry.
Usually happens that the one you always remember. That's why I was surprised.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't know. I was trying to think, just when I saw it yesterday, I couldn't remember if you said you were going to be gone somewhere. I knew you were tripping.
Probably wasn't wise.
Oh, Liz.
And I tell you what, going down there in the last 2 minutes,
Tell that
I
ball.
don't think I've ever seen it.
do it again.
You gotta think he's on the sideline.
That's different.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's got a big job.
Just what I wanted.
All that remodeling.
Kowski can go down the left side, they go.
People over and
West
get
Beach.
some two-point play over.
That's where I kept going over.
No,
It would have been over.
it would not have been, because they, no, but he was going down there for the 2 minutes. They knocked it off.
All right,
And scored a field goal. He was going down.
everybody? Petra, you ready for us? All right, let's, we'll call this town council meeting to order. If everyone would join me with the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, the first item on the agenda are the approval of the minutes of the council meeting on January 9th, 2018. First off, I have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Do we have any changes, comments?
Couple of typos, but nothing of substance.
Just, you've given those to,
No, I've
you've
not,
given,
but I will.
given the picture. Anybody else have any changes or comments?
No.
All right, all in favor of
Aye.
approving minutes?
Aye.
Okay, minutes are approved. Mayor's update. I only have just one thing. The last couple of months, I know I've been reporting on our progress on the replenishment or rebuilding of a number of the dunes along the ocean, and we are in fact finally done. And I particularly want to thank the staff and Jim Jordan especially for all of the work that they've done both to get those permits. As everybody knows, we needed 2 different permits to do it, and also over an extended period of time and some really bad weather, getting that project done. We moved we replenished dunes along 15,700 feet of beach. Jim estimates that we moved 62,800 cubic yards of sand, probably plus or minus a couple yards there. If you recall, we had approved a budget, council had approved a budget of up to $275,000 for the project. And we came in, it looks that when all costs are in, we'll be at about just under 200,000, 198,000. So we're about $75,000 under budget. I hope everybody's been out to take a look at it. I hope everybody sitting out here has gone to look at it. It will be interesting, and I know Jim and I have talked about how we monitor over the next couple of years to get a sense of how that project works. When will we start to see vegetation? When it'll start to, he thinks we'll see vegetation about 2 months or so. But I think we've gained 2 or 3 years in what the natural forces would have done. I also want to thank both the Kiowa partners and especially also the resort for their financial assistance in contributing and helping the town with that project. So anyway, I think that looks to have been a great success, and I look forward to seeing over the next year or 2 what happens out there. That's my only comment. Citizens' comments. If anybody has comments related to any of the items on the agenda, please come on up.
Wendy Kulick, 38 Marsh Edge Lane. My first question has to do with the item for executive session. And my question is, why is what is being discussed there not being discussed in public? As we all know, and having worked for attorneys for 25 or 30 years, just because an attorney is involved doesn't mean that for a municipality that you have to go into executive session. So that would be my first question. And my second question is, who from the town will be attending the meetings and seminars at the State House next Tuesday regarding offshore drilling and seismic testing? Thank you.
Okay. Any other citizens' comments? None? All right.
One more.
Oh, I'm sorry, Virginia.
As long as it's on the agenda, I thought I was going to have to wait. But I'm speaking today to urge the town council to reaffirm your opposition to seismic testing and oil and gas exploration and production offshore Kiowa Island and the entire South Carolina coast. Your previous resolution was made on June 6th, 2017. That's the one you keep reporting to. The statement is incomplete, and it's also unclear to which governing body this was sent. The resolution was made before the January 4th, 2018 proposal by Secretary of the Interior Ryan Zinke to proceed to permit drilling and seismic air gun surveying in most of the U.S. continental shelf waters, including the Atlantic outer continental shelf. An article in the January 26th Post and Courier states that the Charleston area islands are uniting in a suit to block the search for offshore oil. The list of islands participating includes Isle of Palms, Seabrook, Folly Beach, and Sullivan's Island. Kiowa Island is conspicuously absent from the list. The South Carolina Environmental Law Project, SCELP, which I guess is what you're going to be discussing, plans to file suit on behalf of the beach communities at no cost to them, to the communities. I'm asking that you reaffirm your objection to seismic testing and drilling for oil and gas off the South Carolina coast by sending a new resolution to the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management before the close of public comment, which comes on March 9th, 2018. In addition, I'm asking that you join with our neighboring island communities in this lawsuit. The Kiowa Town Council resolution of last June is no longer strong enough to express the concern for the protection of the Kiowa Beach. The beach is the basis of our tourism draw and our property values. Allowing just the possibility that oil and gas drilling might be allowed off the South Carolina coast with the attendant threat of a catastrophic oil spill will lower our property values. Now is the time for the town of Kiowa Island to step up and let its voice be heard to protect our beach for all of us.
Okay, Virginia, thanks very much. Virginia, if you would, it sounds like you had that written out. It would be real helpful if at some point you could give Petra a copy of that. That'd be nice. All right, any other citizens' comments? All right, with that then, we'll move to the consent agenda. We have one item, which is second reading or approval on second reading of ordinance 2018-1, which was an ordinance to amend the Town of Kiowa Island Code of Ordinances by creating Chapter 8 Fairness in Lodging Act Compliance in Article 4 Finance and Taxation to begin partnering with the South Carolina Department of Revenue in order to increase compliance on tax payments from rental properties. Again, this was approved at the last town council meeting on first reading. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, it's approved. We have no old business. I'd like to move to new business. We have, as the first item of new business, the committee appointments for 4 different committees. What I'd like to do is to handle this as a single item. So if I could, if we'll just, first of all, if each of you who are the liaisons for these groups could just for a moment describe the recommendation, who's on the committee, who you are recommending for the committee. We'll go through all of those and then we can bring this to a vote. Jack, Board of Zoning Appeals, I think is yours.
I'm recommending that Mr. J.J. Lewis be nominated to fill a seat left vacant by Michael Cross. That is the only seat that is vacant.
It's vacant. And again, as people may or may not be aware, while most of our committees are one-year appointments, Board of Zoning Appeals is a committee where the appointees have 3-year appointments. So the other persons on this committee are in the middle of their
Right.
terms, right? Okay. Diana, Environmental Committee?
We've had 4 people leave the committee, and we've added 4 people, mainly because we have some other subcommittees that we want to start this year, and we felt like we needed some additional folks to fill those. I'm sorry. We had 4 people leave the committee, and we replaced all 4 of those with people that we feel are excited about forming some subcommittees that we want to continue, that we want to start this year.
Can you just tell us who you're adding?
Oh, sure. Pam Wilson, Scott Nelson, Beverly Golson, and Michael Gniczak.
All right. And then all of the other members that are here are all current members of the
All the
committee.
rest of them are current members,
Right.
yes.
Okay. Public Works, John?
Yeah, this is a relatively new committee formed last year. All of the existing members of the committee have agreed to continue on, which I was very pleased with. So there will be no changes to the committee for this year.
All right, and the State Accommodations Tax Committee, Jack, again, that's yours?
Everyone has agreed to continue on, so there are no changes to the state tax committee.
Okay. All right, do I have a motion to approve these 2018 committee appointments?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Any comments, questions, discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The next item we have is a recommendation for approval of the Casera proposal for 2018 aerial orthophotography services. This was discussed at the last Ways and Means Committee and recommended by Ways and Means Committee for approval by Town Council. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Okay, again, any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Takes us to new business, FEMA proposed flood maps discussion, and Stephanie, you're gonna handle that for us?
Yes.
And this is just a informational
Permission.
item, there's no action being taken, I mean, there is action that the town is gonna be taking, but there's no question for approval by town council, but we do want to update the council and the community on what's taking place.
Okay, Mayor and members of council, this is going to be just a brief update. Bruce had presented this information to you all last year and again this year at the council meeting session. And what I would like to do is just give you a quick discussion on this project. As you know, right now there is currently proposed floodplain FEMA floodplain maps out there. Thank you. That is currently available for viewing for the residents and for the town. From the town's perspective, had Bruce look into this, and we were trying to make the determination if the town was going to act on these new flood maps that are out, or if we were going to do nothing at this time but leave the opportunity open for us to reconsider doing something by ordinance at a later date once we determine if there in fact are any flooding problems in certain areas. Overall, the maps are showing a elevation decrease across the island, as Bruce have looked into. Typically it's about 1 to 5 feet, 4 feet, depending on your area that you live in. And we have talked with the county as well as other municipalities in terms of what impact that can have on residents as well as the town. I did a little survey with some of my neighboring communities, some of the other administrators or managers, to see what their communities are doing. As of right now, a number of them are fine with the proposed maps. We believe that this will have a positive benefit on property owners. We encourage you to talk to your own insurance company, but there is a strong possibility that you will receive a decrease in your rate only because the elevation levels are going to drop 1 foot to 4, depending again on your area. There is, and I will be happy to make sure this information is available. Right now, the proposed maps are in a public comment period. So as a homeowner, you have the ability to go to a website that we will have this information that we will put out through our communications department. Stephanie, we're working on some sort of joint communication and or meeting with Seabrook. That information should be available soon. But the public comment period opened up in January and it closes on April 18th. There's an appeal process. So as a homeowner, you can go to a link that we will share with you. You can look at your current designation as well as your proposed designation. And then if you as a homeowner have an issue with that, you can appeal that process. Now from a town's perspective and other communities, we were trying to determine if there's any potential negative impact for the town not appealing at this time or going through that appeal process through the county and having them appeal on our behalf. Right now, we don't see a reason to file an appeal process or go through the county and let them appeal on our behalf. But we do, again, want to reserve that ability at a later time to appeal a year or two down the road, or look at putting in place, like some jurisdictions, they have by ordinance regulations that freeze or put in place a elevation level that is higher than FEMA. By doing that, it will have, from an insurance standpoint, that will not impact the property owner from an insurance standpoint, because the insurance company look at the FEMA designation as opposed to the ordinance. So that benefit would not change, but we could look into in the future of adding some additional ordinance, but we will monitor that over the next year or two. So again, this is not something that we're asking council to approve. Just wanted to brief you all on what is going on right now and what the town is currently doing, and we will have this information out to the property owners within the next probably week or so. And again, the appeal deadline is not until April 18th of this year. Any questions or comments from council?
And Stephanie alluded to the fact that residents may benefit on their insurance premiums. I mean, obviously I can't guarantee what that is. I've done an informal poll of a couple of our agents in the area that know Kiowa pretty well. And their reaction is it could be substantial, because flood maps are being impacted in two ways. And Bruce, correct me if I'm wrong, in some cases the people who are in a V designation are moving to an A, which is a substantial impact. And so what's that?
I said yes.
Yeah, so people could see a couple $1,000 reduction, is the numbers that have been thrown around in my mind. Obviously, as Stephanie said, one of the concerns from a town standpoint, though, is that it could be problematic if we found that we were building structures at an elevation that later turned out to be problematic in terms of flooding and what have you. But we have the ability to deal with that by ordinance down the road if we ever felt that was important. So the staff has recommended going that approach, and unless we hear something to the contrary, that's the direction we'll move.
That's correct. And just as an example, for this current town hall, when I went onto that link to look at our current designation and new, we're at an AE 11, we're at AE 14 now, and with the new map, they will put us at an AE 11. So to kind of show you the difference and drop.
I don't know, Bruce, is there an easy way for residents to go on and see the change? I mean, I tried to go on and it was not easy, so.
If they go on our website and go to residents, they click on residents at the top, the drop-down page that comes up next on the left column, you'll see a flood awareness page. Click on that, the flood maps, the interactive flood map is on there. They just gotta punch in their address in a block, like a search block.
Yeah.
Once they do that, it'll pop up.
It'll pop up.
And there's if you will, there's layers that you can pick.
Perfect.
Flood map
Or 20.
or the proposed flood map,
Right.
and it'll show you the difference.
Okay. And that's what, Stephanie, that's what you're gonna be showing.
Yes, that's the
Communicating.
link. That's the same link that he's referring to.
All right, if there's no comments, then we'll move to item B, budget report for the period, year-end 2017. Dorota?
Yes, 6 months, yes. You can go to the next slide, Patricia. Yes, I want to present the financial packet for the first 6 months, ended December 31st. And on the balance sheet, you will see that.
Hold on one second. Rusty, is there any chance that we could sort of move that area to his later priority? Thanks.
Yes. Okay, as of December 31st, our combined fund balances were about 15.9 million, and it's a decrease of approximately 800,000 from beginning of the year, from June 30, 2017. And this decrease is actually anticipated because of our timing of our revenues. Majority of it comes on monthly basis, and since the balance sheet and the budget report are compiled on cash basis, we only show 5 months of collections for the monthly remittance, and only 1 quarter for the one that are remitted quarterly. And also this decrease, about 450,000, is related to the construction cost. Of that 15.9 million, about 35%, or about 5.6 million, is available for the town spending, as it's a general fund unrestricted revenue fund balance. Petra, if you move to the next slide. So in overall, for the first 6 months, our revenues appear reasonable and with the expectations in the budget. Not that one.
You can't see the other one.
The other one's sideways.
Sorry.
We won't be offended if everybody wants to do this. It's okay.
Well, anyway, the revenues and,
Okay.
and both expenditures, they look reasonable, and like I said, The revenues, the consolidated revenues are about 3.4 million, and they approximately 80,000 or 2% lower than budgeted, but this again is the timing. With the expenditures, with 50% of the year elapsed, our expenditures are approximately 3.6 million, which is 52% of total budgeted expenditures. And there is a couple of small negative variances, and they will carry through the end of the year. And this is the insurance expense that we talked already about. It's a maintenance, mostly maintenance for this building. For the first 6 months, we already 15% over what's budgeted. But when we budget, we pretty much used unit cost and apply it to the square footage of this building and surroundings, and underestimated that. So we'll do a better job this year projecting that. And also the total number includes the cleanup cost for the storm, for after the storm, and the beach renourishment. And those numbers were 85,000 and 112 at December 31. Now you can move to the next slide, Petra, thank you. Well, the capital expenditures are a little over the budget, but this is again the timing. The final pay for the construction of this building was in August, and we continue having some costs through December. Right now this project is closed, and we end up at about 8.8 compared to a budget of 9 million and a quarter, which was about 5% less, or 416,000 less than budgeted. On the next page, you also, this is just for your information, this is just a recap of all the change orders for the Thomas Construction for the contract. And so it ended up pretty good. It's about 161,000 in change orders for the project of this size. I think it's a good number.
So again, let me just make sure I understand and that everybody got the number. So the project is closed out now. It is closed. So anything we're spending after this is charged to general fund and is not part of the initial construction project. And we came in for approximately $400,000 under budget.
That's correct.
Including what we underspent on the owner's contingency.
That's correct.
Yeah. That's great. I guess all of the, this was a project that, involved a lot of people, actually a lot of citizens, some people who were in this room between two municipal committees that were involved in this, and our former mayor. And considering the size of this project and the fact that the town had not experienced a capital spending project of this size, I think we ought to be pretty, I wish I could take some credit for it. I can't, I wasn't on it, but you all ought to take some credit. I think it's pretty good to bring that project in under budget to that degree. So, and thank you at the committee, and Roger was on it, and who else? So, Mark Marr. All right.
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
Nope. All right, thank you.
And Dorota, just if I always ask it because so much of our revenue, I mean, I know in this shows we've got expenses in hand, but so much of our revenue is backloaded into the first part of this year because of business licenses and whatever.
Licenses,
You're not seeing anything at this point that shows any potential weakness in revenue.
No.
Okay. All right. All right. Town administrators report. Stephanie?
Yes, I would like Mr. Manuel, if you can give an update. If you can give an update, please. What I would like from talk about is right along the causeway, you all may see that the sweet grass is removed, and I just want him to update council on the status of that project.
Yes, good afternoon. Just as an update on the project that a lot of you may not be aware of, out on the park on Betsy Carrison, outside of the roundabout, the town is responsible for roughly about 60 feet coming out of that circle that we maintain and we planted when the road was facilitized several years back. In cooperation with the state, we had some areas that were ponding on the road, where as you come across there just before the roundabout, there's a dip in that road that we don't know what's causing it. We've gotten together with the state. They are coming in and going to do some sampling of that roadway there to make sure that it's structurally safe. If it is, they're going to repave it. As you see right now, all the sweetgrass has been removed from either side of the roadway. They will be coming in and scraping the easements down, because what it's done over the years is build up with dirt and sand, and it's creating a dam that the water doesn't run off the roadway. So they'll be scraping that down. They will be replacing the broken guardrail that's on the outbound lane, but you'll see it's going to be a standardized metal guardrail. That's all that the state is allowed to put in there. After that is completed, we will go back. We are changing the sweetgrass out and putting breeze grass. It doesn't get as large. It stays green all year long, and it doesn't tend to grow out into the asphalt and break it up like it has in some sections of the parkway. We've made a deal with our landscaper, the greenery. They are taking that sweetgrass that they pulled out, and as you see before the Cacique entrance, where it died out over the years, they're replanting it in those bare areas and some of the areas up along the parkway. Also with the projects that we have done along the parkway, where we've had on the bike path, where we've had washouts from both storms, that's been repaired, and they're putting new plantings up along that way. And that's it. Any questions on that?
And I just want to say, anybody who is not aware or convinced of the force of the water during Irma right now, while that sweetgrass is gone and you can look at the railing there, all of that damage to that railing that is pushed over that way is the result of the water force during Irma, when it was coming from the marsh across Betsy Carrison and going into the other side. So as you leave here, you can now get a real sense of just how hard that water was
and it was probably the first time in 20-some years that water has actually come across that section of the causeway.
Yeah.
And did a lot of damage.
Yeah, all that damage was the water force during the storm.
Rusty, you said they are replacing the outbound lane railing.
Yes.
Are they doing anything on the inbound lane?
No,
That's staying the same?
all they're gonna do is scrape it and lower it down to road level to stop that ponding. The worst section of it was when you come out of the circle heading towards Charleston. That first bend right there was the worst section of it. And as you see now, somebody has smashed in, left the roadway, I think, from the water, and there's a guardrail all bent up and some signage. But that will be all re-leveled, be replanted, as well as the drip irrigation put back in it.
Okay. Okay. Stephanie, anything else?
Just one other update for council. We are working, Mr. Lamio and Ms. Dorota Sherbert is working with FEMA right now in regards to Tropical Storm Irma. We had a meeting where they met today at 10 o'clock. We have 60 days to get our paperwork submitted and completed. So far, we have spent $85,000. I believe I saw another receipt I signed off on this week or last week, which was about $5,000. So maybe we're up to about $90,000 or so. I don't know what our total estimated cost will be, but I think it's going to be probably maybe $110,000 or so. But we are working through the process of submitting those receipts to try to get something reimbursed back from FEMA. That's it, Mayor.
All right, council member reports. I'll start on the right with Diana.
I recently went to the Charleston Visitors Bureau meeting, and they're working closely with the county, city, and businesses to help cover labor shortages and parking and housing. They're holding job fairs. They've set up a park and ride, and they're partnering with colleges and interns for internships and all. And we had talked at the retreat about having them come in and talk with us about what all they're doing, not only in Charleston, but what they're doing with Kiowa and all. Do you want me to go ahead and plan that, to have them come?
Yes.
Come speak at a council meeting?
Yes.
Okay. Arts Council, we have We have 7 events in February, 2 of them are art films. Liquid Pleasures was a big success, and so was Low Country Voices. They both sold out. We have Cantus tonight. For Wycliffe Gordon, we've invited 10 students from St. John's to the event, and we'll recognize them during that show.
John?
Okay, yesterday I went to the CHATS committee meeting. That's the Charleston Area Transportation Study Group, representing the town. Most of the projects, virtually all the projects they have on the list don't affect us directly in that they are not anything done on Johns or Wabmala Island. However, there was one project that where the funding source was revised from federal to local, and that was titled Maybank Improvement Phase 1, 2, and 3, which was a new title I hadn't seen before. I asked what that was, and they said, okay, and it actually was Maybank Improvement from the Stono River Bridge to Bohicket Road, so that kind of piqued my interest. They said, well, that's just the resurfacing of Maybank and the addition of a bike path on Maybank. In case any of you have not noticed, there is a bike path on Maybank. Secondly, it was the work now being done at the Johns Island end of the bridge to widen the road, put some turn lanes in, and add another lane. And then the third piece of it was the finishing of the so-called pitchfork that would allow 3 lanes coming off the bridge in sort of a pitchfork configuration. And that's it. And I asked, are there any other plans for Johns Island at this point? And the answer was no. Paul Roberts has opined on several occasions, including yesterday, that the pitchfork not only would not work, but would actually make matters worse, and has offered an alternative design to the county, which has been ignored. They are going to go ahead with a pitchfork. So unfortunately, there's no good news to report in terms of any attention the county is paying on Johns Island roads. We sat across from Vic Roll, the chairman of the council, and expressed our dismay over this. He kind of shrugged and said, well, we're working on it, so we'll see what happens. General comment, Diana mentioned the Convention and Visitors Bureau. We have learned recently that the Cars on Kiowa show on April 21st is going to be the subject of a national television show, which will be filmed on the island on the day of the show. The Convention and Visitors Bureau has been very helpful in working with the crew that will come in to do the filming, and has agreed to subsidize their some of their expenses, their airfare and car rental and that kind of thing, up to about, I think, about $2,000. So that was very nice. In addition, the Key Island Golf Resort has agreed to provide accommodations for the film crew. So that also is a very welcome and good thing for this show. This will be a national show. It'll be aired in early 2019, I believe, and it'll be on the Velocity channel, which is, not exactly ESPN, but a channel that's watched very closely by anyone who's at all interested in automobiles. That's all I have.
Okay. Chris?
Nothing to report this month.
Jack?
Nothing.
All right. With that, general citizens' comments?
First of all, since a lot of people are in the process of preparing their income tax returns for this year, I think it might be helpful if in one of its upcoming communications, the town reminds people of the state of South Carolina form TC 44, which allows you a tax credit of up to $1,250 for property owners paying more than 5% of their income for insurance coverage. Now, it's for your legal residents, so obviously that's for full-time residents, and it doesn't help part-timers, but anything that helps, you know, certainly should be good information to be passed along. I had a number of reactions to the town retreat that was held last week, and the first thing I want to say is that it was patently obvious how much time and effort Stephanie and her staff, and with the help of Joan Houston, the facilitator, put into preparing it. There was tons and tons of very useful information, was very educational, and it's unfortunate that only 3 property owners were able to benefit from it. But I have a number of suggestions which I'm going to submit to Petra separately and ask her to share them with you. But I did want to ask a couple of questions specifically about it today. Does the town council plan to schedule what I would think of as a retreat in terms of policies, planning for the future, based on the recommendations which staff put so much time and effort into, about which ones to be adopted, which ones, if not going to be adopted, why? You know, what would be a real retreat? Because I kind of looked at last week as an opportunity for staff to educate council and the public as to what their responsibilities and duties are and how they're carrying them out. But that's not the council side of it. So if you haven't considered doing that, I would certainly suggest that you do so. What was the cost for Joan to facilitate the plan, meet with Stephanie and her staff, help them prepare the information, and attend the first day of the retreat? Because the retreat wasn't streamed, it meant that only the 3 of us who were there were able to benefit from all the information that was provided and the things that were discussed. And again, because it wasn't streamed and I didn't see any taping of it, if a property owner wanted to go back and look at it because he or she couldn't be here, there's no way to do that. So for the future, I think that would be a helpful thing to do. I also think providing opportunities during the retreat for property owner input and reaction would be helpful, because there wasn't anything officially. I very much appreciated the few opportunities that I was provided to provide some background information, but there was no actual opportunity to do so. And then during the retreat, a number of times when discussing landscaping for this municipal center, there was reference made to the fact that roses were planted instead of using native plants. And one thing that was not at all clear to me, I don't know if it was clear to you, was how did this happen, who approved it, and how come nobody knew about it? Thank you.
There's a lot of questions there, so I won't try right now to respond to all of them. The only one I will, I don't envision, and we have as a council not talked about this, I don't envision that we'll have a follow-up meeting per se to talk specifically about in a strategy session the recommendations or the things that came out of the last 2 days last week, except that you need to think that the budget process is really the process by which the town and the town council really thinks about and debates and then put through how we make spending decisions, puts in place different projects, spending priorities, and so on. So to a large extent, I think the budget process that rolls out over the next couple months really is what you're asking about, what you're looking for. That is where I think you will see the discussions from town council to say, okay, these are the things that we heard last week, Thursday and Friday. And as we start debating and thinking through where are we spending money, what programs are we funding, where are we allocating resources, I think that's where you will see that kind of discussion. So I don't envision a separate meeting, but I think the kinds of things that you're pressing for, which is where does council really talk about these things, will happen through the budget process.
Thank you.
And I'll get a list of the other questions in this. With respect to Joan's cost, we do put out on our website our cost. One way or the other, that number will get out there so you can find it. Okay, any other citizens' comments?
Diane Leader, 306 Palm Warbler. I'd just like to echo Ginny Abbott's comments on the proposal for offshore drilling. I spoke on this issue at last month's council meeting. Once again, I'd like to urge you to renew the town's opposition to this project and further urge you to sign on to SCELP's efforts to pursue this in the courts. At the January meeting, Roger Warren suggested polling the community on this issue. I think it's a reasonable request and certainly one that I can support. But personally, I think that taking no action is an inadequate response from the town. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other, Judge?
Well, due to medical reasons, I didn't make a number of meetings, but in reference to the retreat and the meetings I didn't make, I went online and was very impressed by the YouTube availability. However, when I tried to get to the retreat online YouTube, still not there. How long generally does it take before they are on YouTube, or isn't it intended that the retreat be on YouTube?
I think,
We
yeah.
could not live stream it within that meeting room. I could not get it to live stream.
Okay, so it is not available, or it will be?
It won't be. It will not be.
Okay.
We have the capability of which we didn't used to be able to do, but we now have the ability to live stream
Okay.
our meetings. But we did that as a business meeting over there, and we don't have the technology.
All right, and as I said, I haven't been here, and you know that, for the last few meetings. I think the last one I was here is November. And I want to comment on these shades, because you know I had said, basically I was concerned about the safety of this council, not only having a single entry place, but that when I had a design of the courtrooms, and we had 6 courtrooms and 11 judges, I even had bulletproof benches so that people can duck behind it. And I commented to both Miss Reynolds and the young lady next to her, basically, that if somebody wanted to pick you guys off, they can shoot through the windows and from outside, and they wouldn't have to worry about a single entry place. But I mention that because I think the curtains, as I came by, are opaque from the outside. So I think it's an extra measure of protection for everybody who's in here, particularly for you guys. A couple of other questions, and I'll try to be brief. The federal case status, does anybody know what it is? The reason I asked that question, I know...
I can answer right now. No, we don't.
Okay,
I mean,
because-
we know only what has been reported. You're talking about our former...
Yes, Rucker and Gunnels.
Yes,
And I was
so
just-
nothing has changed. Both have been indicted. They were in the period recently where lawyers, the prosecutors, begin to provide information and data to the attorneys.
Yes, discovery.
Discovery, and that is taking place, and we have no information beyond that whatsoever.
Has any council member, or maybe through Dwayne, been contacted to be interviewed by the government to be witnesses against?
No.
No. I think I've always asked about the Mercer Group salary situation. Has that been reported yet?
It has not. We have the results, and I would imagine, in fact, Stephanie and I talked yesterday, we'll be bringing recommendations to the April Ways and Means Committee. Yes.
And the last comment, and I look at the executive session, and I've always been complimentary, saying you haven't had many.
But I gotta let
if
you
any
down.
at
I'll
all.
let
This
you down
seems
once
to-
in a while, so we'll do that today.
Yeah, but let me just make a comment. I don't think all legal opinions necessarily are privileged.
Okay.
And this one doesn't seem to be.
Okay.
Because if he's only being asked the question about what his legal opinion is in fact, the last meeting I was here, or I watched, I think Wendy brought up an issue about whether or not the town should go after them civilly, meaning Gunnels and Reynolds. And he gave an opinion, which is appropriate.
Okay.
So I wondered about that.
Okay. Noted.
The other thing I might compliment the council on, and although I haven't been here, I've watched it on TV or on the YouTube, the meetings are short and sweet.
We try.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. All right, and then we're,
And that is, how long do you think executive session's gonna last?
all right. Let me first get a motion to, so with that, I'll close off the citizens' comments. Do I have a motion to move it, for the council to move into executive session to receive legal opinion from the town attorney on a matter related to the anticipated challenge by South Carolina Environmental Law Project to seismic testing and drilling in Atlantic coastal waters? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I would expect 45 minutes, and I can absolutely guarantee that when I come out, I will be saying the words no vote, no action was taken, no votes were taken, just in case you're
No
deciding. What?
No decisions were made.
No decisions were made, no votes were taken, in case you're wondering whether 45 minutes is worth your time to wait. Thank you very much.